A few days after some students were abducted from the university in Kaduna State, it has been reported that gunmen have again kidnapped a number of medical workers from a hospital in the state. Officials are calling on people to remain calm, even as investigation begins into the incident. On Wednesday, students were abducted from Greenfield University on the outskirts of Kaduna. There has been no update on their whereabouts or well-being ever since then. In another development, reports from neighboring Zamfara state have it that motorbike-riding gunmen have killed dozens of people and burnt down a number of homes in a series of raids targeting remote villages. A police spokesperson confirmed the attacks but couldn't give any casualty figures. Residents say they counted more than 50 bodies. Some of the victims are said to be people displaced by previous attacks, now returning home to prepare for their farmlands as the rainy season begins. Meanwhile, a meeting of northern governors with President Muhammadu Buhari is taking place in Abuja. It was held because of the security situation in the region. The governors say they are trying to find a lasting solution to rising wave of banditry and criminality in the region and have sought the support of the federal government. Chairman of the Northern Governors Forum and Governor of Plateau State, Simon Lalong, said the meeting was very fruitful.
Meeting is in respect of some of the common features of insecurity that we have within our states. You recall that many of the states have some of the insecurities that are very similar. So within us here, we have a lot of them that are similar. We put them together on how to address some of those issues. And we felt that we must also meet Mr. President about it. It's about the insecurity. I think they are not disclosed because these are security, but the takeaway will say that the meeting with the President was very fruitful. And we are also very committed, and we have seen a lot of commitments, so we're waiting for the implementation. Well, you will see what will happen. I think that's the assurance I will give you. Because based on this meeting, we will also wait to see the commitment. And Mr. President has given us that assurance.
Right, another sad one.
It's ridiculous at this point. I'm also waiting to see this implementation Governor Lalong speaks of, because another day, another attack. It's really awful. Obviously, they've declared open season on Kaduna State, and it's something that OG mentioned that I don't know who they are, that people are saying that it's because the governor is refusing to negotiate with the bandits that they're, concentrating on his state. But really, what are the alternatives? You have two alternatives. You either negotiate with bandits or you kowtow. Those are the only two alternatives. So I don't see how a governor standing his ground, as he ought to, should be perceived as being antagonistic to the bandits. It further outlines the perception that that is who is running this country now and not the federal government. He is right to continue to maintain that he's not going to kowtow as others have done, because it does not protect you. Did we not have peace accords in Katsina State? Were they not reneged on? It does not protect you. That's clearly not the answer. The answer is to deal with this summarily. And that we recall the president's instructions that if you see anybody, armed people walking around the forest, they should be shot. Well, why isn't that happening? So I'm waiting to see this implementation, and I don't know what the next plan is.
Dr. Abati?
Well, first, let's start with the basic principles. Security and the welfare of the people is one of the major objectives of governance, as clearly stated in Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999. Now, when the present ruling government wanted to take over power, or Progressive Congress, Nigerians were promised that security would be a cardinal objective, and that's why they have what they call SEA policy: security, the economy, and fight against corruption. SEA. Now, but unfortunately, security at that time was taken as the major priority of the government, considering the fact that there was this perception, this supposition, this assumption by many Nigerians that a civilian, having been president, probably could not understand security issues. And so Nigerians overwhelmingly, it will appear, followed President Buhari in 2015 and voted for him again in 2019 based on the hope that he will be able to deal with the security problems in Nigeria. But what have we seen since 2015? Even the general, war-tested general, civil war hero, has been overwhelmed by the security situation in the country. And the problem has proved intractable. Personnel have been changed. We've been told that hardware and software have been provided. The problem has not yet ended. I think that the basic thing that the Buhari administration has to do in the remaining moments, in the remaining months, now less than 21 months, is to look at that cardinal objective to secure Nigeria, to provide welfare for the people of Nigeria, and to see what can be done. Now, northern governors have met with the president. That's understandable. In the last 2-3 weeks, the situation has worsened. In the northwest, in the northeast. It used to be the northeast, it spread to the northwest. But I don't think it's only the governors of the north that the president has to meet with. He also has to meet with governors from the south so that there can be a meeting of minds as to what to do with security in Nigeria. Only yesterday, we cited examples of attacks in Enugu State, in Imo State, in Niger State, in other parts of the country. So insecurity is a major challenge that this administration faces. Now, there's a subtext to the meeting with the northern governors yesterday. The northern governors, they said, yes, the president restated his commitment to ensure security and to provide support. But the spokesperson for the governors, Simon Lalong, the governor of Plateau State, he says, yes, they are waiting to see that commitment in operation. Yes. It's not enough to just promise, to give promises, to espouse fanciful rhetoric. Okay, what is the implementation? Those governors, I mean, they wouldn't have the confidence to criticize the president directly. But that's more or less what they were doing when they met with him yesterday. That, okay, you have this commitment, you have restated this commitment over and over again. Where is the implementation? And I think that on a larger stage, there are key issues that we need to look at. Key issues about the structure of the police, which came up at a town hall meeting that was organized and which was reported by the Minister of Information at the News Agency of Nigeria Forum. Key issues about state police. Key issues about the performance of the various security agencies. Key issues about synergy among the various security agencies. We cannot have a country where bandits and terrorists will overrun, override, overwhelm a sitting government. That is a major challenge for President Buhari, and he has to think of it in legacy terms.
I mean, all the words I'm hearing this morning, I just remember the words of Winston Churchill that says, an appeaser is the one that gives everybody crocodile and hopes to be eaten last. Welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. Let's quickly move over to our dependable Rotus Adiri. Hi, Rotus, how are you doing?
Hi, good morning to you. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Kick things off with the latest meeting of the National Economic Council. Vice President Osibanjo released some images on his social media accounts. You can see images of Vice President Osibanjo presiding over the National Economic Council. They put out a statement saying that no money was printed in March. There he is. You can see his Apple device there. You've got Mr. Governor Fayeme, Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Finance, a number of them there. So the National Economic Council, just for those out there, made up of the 36 state governors, the governor of the central bank, other government officials. They meet monthly on measures that are necessary for the coordination of the economic planning efforts of different government agencies of the country. So they came out, put out a statement saying that no money was printed. Let's take a tweet from Laolu Akonde, who is a senior special assistant to the Vice President on Media and Publicity. It says any claim that 60 billion any amount whatsoever was printed to augment March allocation is outrightly false, says the National Economic Council presided over by the Vice President Osibanjo. The council also strongly affirmed Nigeria's unity and direct state-by-state consultations on critical issues. It's all, I have to say, it's all very confusing. Just look, I just want to show you folks something here. Let's look at the United States, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. Now, if you look at the bottom left of the screen, there's a red arrow, and that arrow is the balance as of April of 2020. That's about $6.4 trillion. If you follow the white line all the way to the right, this is from the Bloomberg terminal as of April 15th. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve now is $7.7 trillion. So that's a growth of about $1.3 trillion between April of last year and April of this year. just for context, these countries are trying to augment their finances. I mean, Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID plan, COVID relief funds, his $2.2 trillion spending plan, all this money has to come from somewhere. So again, but hey, the NEC says no money was printed, so no money was printed. We leave it at that. To Ghana, let's take a look at the the Ghanaian Ministry of Industry and Trade. That's Mr. Alan John Keremata on the right. That's Christoph Retzlaff, the German ambassador to Kenya on the left. Hyundai, Kia have said that a new plant is going to be due in Ghana by the end of 2022. Take a look at some tweets here. So let's take a look at tweets from the Minister of Trade and Industry for Ghana. There he is. Pleased to announce that Hyundai and Kia are set to establish assembly plants in Ghana by the end of 2022 to join Toyota, Suzuki, Nissan, Kantaka, Volkswagen, and Sinotruk. Ghana Auto Development Program will look at 3,600 assembly and 6,600 manufacturing jobs in Ghana. A tweet from Christoph himself, Christoph Retzlaff. He said Germany works with the Ghana Ministry of Trade to foster investment and jobs. Today, I had the honor to launch the new partnership agreement together with the minister to boost the automotive sector and industrial zones in Ghana. To the ongoing climate summit, we are due to hear from President Buhari later on today. President Joe Biden spoke yesterday. Putin spoke. A number of world leaders about climate change. Biden made that ambitious plan for the U.S. to cut carbon emissions in half by the end of the decade. Let's hear from Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, who spoke yesterday.
Okay, Rosa, I think we'll just move on from that.
I'll just summarize. I thought we had that, but Ramaphosa essentially said that aid coming from the West to African nations has to be segmented. They cannot lump together climate aid with other aid, general aid coming into that. It has to be segmented because you are going to essentially increase the debt burdens on developing nations if you do that. He also said that developing nations from Africa and others contribute the least amounts to climate change, to environmental degradation, but they suffer a disproportionate amount of effects from it. So that's essentially what Ramaphosa said, the president of South Africa, and we'll hear from President Buhari later on today.
Well, very quickly, let's start with the car manufacturing companies going to Ghana. We're back to the same old problem. Okay, before now it was Twitter you brought. After that, there was this German, establishment going to set up infrastructure in Ghana. And each time we hear that people are going to Ghana, we get disturbed in Nigeria out of nationalism, out of patriotism. Now we're talking about the automotive industry. Now, I think this should give us an opportunity to reflect further on the crisis with the automotive industry in Nigeria, and also the crisis with policy alignment, also the crisis with policy somersault. You'll recall that in 2013, Nigeria introduced what they called the Nigeria Automotive Industry Development Plan, under which import tariff was placed at 70% for imported vehicles. And there was also a plan to encourage Innocent and other companies to set up vehicle assembly plants in Nigeria. And also in some of the universities, automotive engineering was introduced as a subject, which was meant to reinvent the achievement in the 1970s, when we had Peugeot, we had Volkswagen, we had Nissan, we had even Anamco in the present Anambra state producing vehicles in Nigeria. But you will recall the finance bill of 2021. The finance bill of 2021 simply, reduced tariff for imported vehicles from 35% to, was it 5%? And many, stakeholders in that industry protested that this would kill vehicle assembly plants in Nigeria, including Innocent, which should be encouraged. And there were companies that also wanted to come and set up in Nigeria, Hyundai, Kia, Nissan. They all wanted to come back to Nigeria. But if you introduce such a policy, how do you encourage local productivity? So it's not in every instance that we just get emotional and say, oh, why are they going to Ghana? Nigeria is the giant of Africa. No, you can only be giant of Africa if you introduce the right policies and you do the right things. Okay? So, I know you brought the subject just to remind us that Ghana seems to be ahead of the game. And for vehicle assembly, vehicle production, you need power.
Yeah. Right.
Yesterday we were talking about, the power sector in Nigeria. And I heard the position that it's not about cost-reflective tariffs. It's a cocktail of issues. It's about alternative energy. It's about infrastructure. It's about expanding the grid. It's about giving the states a better role to play. Right. But oftentimes we think in a tunnel vision contest in this country. And we need to continue to talk about the regulatory environment. That's a pet subject for Professor Pachutome. He was with me on This Day Live, over the weekend, I think. And he was saying, look, the biggest problem to investment and productivity in Nigeria is a regulatory investment. We cannot talk of ease of doing business on one hand, and we don't see the entire picture. As for the National Economic Council saying we didn't print money and all that, okay, all of that is just to show that the governor of Edo State has no credit, has no credibility as a whistleblower. But the point, the bigger argument, is that countries do quantitative easing to help the economy. There is nothing wrong in it. That's the basic economic argument. It is what you do with quantitative easing. Right. Are you going to do quantitative easing to distribute money for consumption or for productivity? Right. So there's no point for the Economic Council to play the ostrich and say, we didn't print money. Okay, if you print money, it's fine. But if you print the money, what is the effect? On unemployment rate, on inflation, headline inflation, on food inflation. That's what Nigerians are asking for. Right. Because we see other examples in other parts of the world. That's the issue, in my view.
Exactly. Well, to address your point, Dr. Abati, about the patriotism, I think in everything, it's self-inflicted wounds that hurt the most. So people take umbrage because we know that we have allowed this situation. We have the Nigerian Automotive Industry Bill of 2021, and we had, well, huge expectations that OEMs were going to come to Nigeria. And now look at the news, they've gone to Ghana yet again. So it's not about really blaming Ghana or blaming those companies, we're blaming ourselves, as we ought to.
I think the bigger issue here, apart from all of this, is the selfish interest that drives the levers of those policies. And I think that's what we don't get to address enough. The fact that we had a policy at first, an automotive industry policy to support people in this sector so we can have car produced here, and the fact that some lobbying went on at the back for them to reverse that policy, because that policy didn't just reverse itself. A process happened that led to that. And as they reversed it, it's fulfilling some people's personal demands and selfish interests. So it's not about the nationalistic Israel. And when you look across board in Nigeria, that's what hurts us on every ground. Just like the agriculture policy. We shut down the border. Somebody said, we'll throw the key in the water. What happened? The next minute we're opening the border. We don't even know what to say.
And the impact.
And the impact of that, because a lot of investors will sit down in New York and say, okay, what's Nigeria's automotive policy? And they don't get it. They don't understand it because they know it can change tomorrow if somebody's interest is at stake. So most of this company will keep going to Ghana, and let me bet you, they are going to produce those cars in Ghana, but most of those cars are going to find their way to the Nigerian market. Exactly. Because of adjacency.
Yeah, right.
So they are going to make all the money from the Nigerian market while Ghana gets all the taxes. Right. So these are the things we should really look at that really comes to bite us. And you see, the destruction of our economy is do it yourself. We're doing it ourselves. Thank you so much, Rotus.
Well said.
Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to a business update. We'll call him Michael Wilson, joins us now from London. Michael, great to have you.
Morning. A wave of risk aversion, really, after the US president signals his intention to increase capital gains tax once again to people who earn more than $1 million a year. That undid the optimism basically about the jobless figures, the weekly ones, which came in yesterday, 547,000, gradually declining. And it only suggests that plodding is turning into maybe walking slightly in terms of a recovery momentum in the United States. So that sort of helped markets generally overnight. Of course, what President Biden wants and what he's actually going to get, very difficult to know about that. He's asking for above 40% for corporate gains tax. I suspect it may be down to about 28. But as the wires actually showed those kind of things, it had its own effect on the markets, as you'd expect. So although the Asian stock market's got this kind of temporary US capital gains hiccup, the data that came out, there wasn't a lot of it, but there were some quite good things in it. Japan's flash manufacturing PMI it increased very, very slightly. Services PMI up 2. Nikkei down 0.8 as it goes into the weekend. Kospi and mainland China markets are also, though, relatively positive. Shanghai Composite risen 0.2%. Japan's inflation uninspiring, as you'd expect. They seek, after 20 years of deflation, they're after some kind of inflation. Although Asia, reacted slightly to what was happening with corporate gains tax, it looks like that they decided to just end the week by not paying too much attention to the noise coming from the United States. China's President Xi Jinping called for countries to work together. This is at the Climate Change Conference, the virtual conference hosted by the United States. He spoke for 5 minutes. It's about the only thing that the US and China actually agree on. Reducing carbon emissions is one of those few areas. It also aligns that the Asian nation plans to reach peak carbon emissions by 2030. That's interesting. Remember when I'm saying peak carbon emissions by 2030, not getting rid of them, but actually as high as they're going to go. And this, of course, is the problem, isn't it? That developing nations will, it's fine being a developed nation and saying we're going to get rid of fossil fuels. But if you're developing, you're beginning to say to yourself, well, hang on a second, let's develop first and then worry about green stuff later on. A widely, though, circulated report to those virtual people yesterday was talking about China replacing its coal-fired power plants with zero carbon alternatives, and it could save $1.6 trillion by doing that by 2030. See about that. China's also setting some roadblocks to IPOs. Now, the China Securities Regulatory Commission, and it's updated its guidelines for tech companies wanting to list on the Shanghai Stock Exchange. Last Friday, we're getting details now that the China Securities Regulatory Commission updated its guidelines. It's a sort of NASDAQ-style index there, the Shanghai Stock Exchange Science and Technology Innovation Board, but they're not allowing real estate firms involved in financial services to be involved in that. It's in stark contrast to 6 months ago when a slew of Chinese startups listed domestically. We did cover quite heavily, didn't we, the business about Ant's IPO being pulled. And it still looks as though if you want to have a startup in China and you want to have an IPO, then you're going to be going to the United States or Hong Kong. It won't be listing in China. Bit of a PR crash for Tesla in China at a motor show there. A woman went up with, in Chinese, "the brakes don't work," written on a T-shirt. And this was sort of poo-pooed a bit by the authorities, and it's gone viral, this video in China, and it's not doing well. Not doing well for Tesla. They're losing the PR fight about this. They should have thought about this, really. Never expose yourself to the public unless you've got a good story, is my view about those kind of things. And just China again, it's fighting, the authorities there are fighting Jack Ma for his data. That's the most valuable asset in Ma's financial empire. And it would not just apply to the data that he's got about consumer spending, but it would also apply to banks as well, which compete in the same field that Ant does. Okay, so that's the latest from China. As far as the United States is concerned, just as we have them, the Biden tax plans seek to raise taxes on millionaire investors to fund education and other spending things for this overhaul of the US economy. Capital gains to 39.6%. That's what he's trying to propose for Americans earning more than $1 million a year. But again, as I said, what he wants and what actually happens once it's been through the finely divided administration, both pro and anti in the United States, we'll see about that. The global semiconductor shortage could become the new oil. A variety of factors, which we've talked about in the past, have come to make semiconductors. It could be the shortage could be 0.5% of GDP. Price increases could be 3% on effective goods. And just to add to that, in the UK, Jaguar has halted work at 2 sites on Merseyside and Castle Bromwich, their main sites in this country. And they say that the problems, not necessarily the closures, but the problems could last for another 2 years. We covered the European Central Bank with Reuters yesterday. It was very neutral, basically. didn't answer any of the questions that the Hawks have been putting towards it, i.e. when is QE going to end? And we're only halfway through the amount of money actually earmarked for QE. So again, nothing from them. I suspect we're looking at a crunch meeting, I think, not in May, which will be the next one, but in June. As far as Greenshill scandals concerned, more it widens. Apparently, ex-Prime Minister David Cameron lobbied Bank of England and also top financial officials about the Greenshill problems and so on. And it looks as though that pair actually just joins this growing list of people who have been affected by this, and it does ask all these questions about whether politicians should be involved in business or not. I'm sure you're very familiar with all that kind of stuff. UK consumer confidence, those figures came out around about 7 o'clock this morning. There's a certain amount of confidence, but still a bit of caution. Retail sales under the fact that public borrowing reached £303 billion. That's the highest since the end of World War II in the year to March. Shopping for clothes Hello, sorry, we're trying to talk to me then. I do beg your pardon. Sorry, I heard some. Still below pre-pandemic levels. Non-food showing an uplift of 13.4%, and older people doing well, buying medical aids and so on, and also garden centres. We always trust on the sunshine coming out. Oil slightly higher on Libya concerns, falling due to cash flow constraints. That's Libyan production. Energy markets, though, really in holding position about the OPEC Plus meeting next week. Gold got to 1,800 and then retreated again. It says everything you want to know about it, really. Not really moving. And if you want a thought for the weekend, it's just this, basically, that if you're investing, there's been a great value in not taking, there's no big data out, which is affecting, and there hasn't really been any enormous data out during the week, then don't bother. Sit on the sidelines, because if you'd been doing that, you would have been wasting your time. So the markets have finished more or less. We started the week.
Okay, Michael Wilson, thank you so much for your time. We had lots of questions, but we'll push that to the next week. Have a great weekend, by the way, I should say. Dr. Bati, we'll move straight to you.
Well, foreign leaders began to arrive in Chad on Thursday for the funeral of slain President Idris Deby Itno, as France backed the country's new military leaders in the face of threats from rebels to resume an offensive on the capital. The presidents of Guinea and Mali arrived in the capital in N'Djamena, state television showed, despite warnings from the rebels that foreign leaders should not attend for security reasons. French President Emmanuel Macron was also due to travel to Chad overnight for the funeral on Friday. French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said the military was justified in its actions, as the Speaker of Parliament had declined to take charge. 10 African presidents and prime ministers, including Guinea's Alpha Condé, Mali's Ba Ndawa, Democratic Republic of Congo's Felix Tshisekedi, were due to arrive on Thursday for the funeral, the government said. Despite the rebel threat, people went about their business as usual in N'Djamena on Thursday, with some saying they were frustrated and worried about the situation. Arise special correspondent Carl Bostic is right there in N'Djamena and now joins us for a quick situation report. Carl Bostic, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the morning show. Hi, Carl.
Good morning.
Well, quickly, what's the situation in N'Djamena at the moment with the burial plans and ceremonies for former President Idris Deby Itno?
Yes, right now I'm at the Place de la Nation. That's where the official ceremony will take place. It hasn't started yet. We are seeing the arrivals of diplomats already commencing. But we have not seen all the key leaders that you were referring to. But you know, it is being reported that the heads of states in 10 countries and also President Macron will be attending this ceremony. Countries including Mali, Niger, Republic of Congo, and Guinea-Conakry. So right now, all dignitaries are assembling. And also the flags are half-mast. It'll be a week of national mourning. But besides just the grief and shock that people are experiencing here in the capital and the rest of the country, it's grief and shock that's also paralyzed by fears of security. At the security crisis, in the sense that, for example, curfews are in place beginning at 8 p.m. in the evening until further notice. In other words, at least for a week because of the security threats, where you have the rebel groups that you mentioned threatening to proceed onward to the capital. The same rebel group with whom government forces were fighting earlier this week that led to the killing of Idris Deby Itno at the beginning of this week. So it's been a flurry of action here, and there's a lot of worry about the security threats, about whether or not they reach the capital at all. They're about maybe 190 miles away. They expect that they'll hold their fire. They'll cease any fighting or military activity until after the burial. So what happens here is that we'll have the official ceremony, and then his body will be presented to the family, which is to be at a ceremony at the Grand Mosque here in Jamena. So it'll go from the official ceremony to the mosque, and then later this afternoon, it'll be a burial ceremony in his hometown of Anjamas, and that's the northern part of Chad. And after that, that's where the anxiety begins, because the rebel forces and other fighters have said that once the burial ceremony concludes, they may carry out their threats to resume fighting, even to proceeding towards N'Djamena, if they can do so. And it's worrisome because this has happened before. It happened back in 2008, when you actually had fighting inside the city. So that's why you have the fear there. But there's also the political crisis in terms of who's in charge, because according to the Constitution, the Speaker of the Parliament should be next in line of succession to the President if there's any emergency, but the Speaker declined to take that position, citing ill health, especially in view of the security concerns. And that's the justification for the formation of this military council that Itno's son, Mohammed Deby Itno, who's head of that military council, is only 37 years old, with not that much military experience, and that's why even the military is divided about whether he should even be the leader or not. So you have a political crisis swirling, security crisis swirling, and even economic crisis also at bay, with the largest workers' union, that's the syndicate of workers of Chad. They just went on strike because of salaries not being paid on time. So that's the situation confronting Chad right now. It's a very tense moment right now for so many reasons, as I was just mentioning.
Understandably so. Thank you for that detailed analysis. But unfortunately, your voice is slightly muffled. I think you made a reference to a ceasefire during the funeral rites, if that's correct. To what extent can it be trusted that the rebels will adhere to that kind of civility? Because that's not really a word one associates with rebels. What kind of security is being arranged to ensure that all goes smoothly?
Well, that's right. In fact, that's why there's so much uncertainty and so much anxiety, because they've promised to resume their fighting once burial ceremonies conclude. In other words, once burial ceremonies conclude in the hometown of Anjaras, that's in the northern part of Chad, and that'll happen later today, sometime this afternoon. So when night falls, that's when that'll be a test of just what resolve exists in terms of government forces. That's why you've got a curfew at 8 o'clock in the evening. Right now, for example, the streets of N'Djamena, the capital, the streets are empty, they're deserted. First of all businesses are closed as well. But not only are the streets empty and deserted, but there are troops in the streets everywhere. So it's tense because there's no longer normal activity at each point today, and that could continue for the days following.
Well, thank you very much, Carl Bostic. We'll keep in touch with you. We will have loved to discuss with you the role of France in the developing situation in Chad. But thank you very much. We'll keep in touch as the event unfolds with the burial.
All right, over now we'll move quickly to Adesua Mora to get reports on COVID-19. Adesua?
Oh, good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning, Tundu. Now, for the second day, India is reporting the world's highest daily tally of coronavirus cases as well as deaths. Over 330,000 cases and 2,000 deaths have been reported on Friday, today already in India. Major hospitals are running low on beds and oxygen. And as the cases surge in India, its double mutant variant is spreading across the world. The UK reported 55 of it yesterday, and more countries are also placing a ban on flights from India, including Canada, New Zealand, and UAE. Those are the latest countries to place a ban on flights from the country. But it's not just India that it's seen surge in cases and deaths. Elsewhere, including but not limited to the United States of America, we're seeing increase in cases in Turkey, Iran, France, and so the coronavirus pandemic is far from over. Here in Nigeria, 9 states were responsible for the latest 100 new infections in the last 24 hours. Taraba State posted more than half of the cases. And let's look at the vaccination rollouts in Nigeria, which continues in some states as well. An additional 14,843 people received their first jabs in the last 24 hours, according to these NPH CDA data you have on your screen. There are still about 11 states yet to hit the 50% mark. Abia, Zamfara, some of the states still have, very limited numbers to show for vaccination rollout. Now, we talked about this recently. Vaccines near expiry dates sent to some African countries. Well, the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which is the Africa CDC, has responded to concerns raised. It says the Serum Institute of India, which manufactured the vaccines in question, did further analysis, and it indicates that the vaccines are actually safe. They have an extended shelf life of 3 months. The head of the Africa CDC, John Inkagesong, who gave the clarification, however, didn't seem pleased that the vaccines were not used up immediately by the countries that received them. You recall that Malawi and South Sudan have plans to destroy or not use 16,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine in Malawi and 59,000 doses in South Sudan. Well, to some good news, developers of the Russian COVID-19 vaccine Sputnik V say they signed a deal with a leading Egyptian pharmaceutical company to manufacture more than 40 million doses annually in Cairo for global distribution. The Russian Direct Investment Fund, along with the Egypt's Minafam and its Berlin-based subsidiary, issued a joint statement yesterday, and they say that this technology transfer will begin immediately. It expects to roll out the Sputnik V vaccine in the 3rd quarter of this year. So that's good news. That's what we've been talking about, to make sure that we have more vaccines for the world. And then the dust is yet to settle, I must tell you, for AstraZeneca and the European Union. Yesterday, there were indications that the Union is weighing legal action against AstraZeneca for missing vaccine delivery promises. But member states are divided on the issue. Germany and France, we have been told, have asked for more time to think about this. AstraZeneca has a contract to supply 180 million doses to the EU between April and June, but has been accused of under-delivering. And finally, a new study shows that survivors of COVID-19 had almost 60% increased risk of dying within 6 months after contracting the virus. Now, the study looked at over 70,000 patients who caught the virus but weren't hospitalized. However, they survived within the first 30 days. There's still so much we do not know about the coronavirus, and scientists fear that this is one of the hidden toll of the pandemic. But I must add a footnote that this study has some limitations because it focused solely on military veterans. Less than 20% of patients were female, and most of the 70,000 people looked at were over the age of 60.
India. Let's start with India. And the question to ask are 2 questions. Why is there a sudden surge in India? In India at the moment, there is a shortage of oxygen supply. We're told that there's also a shortage of vaccine supply, vaccine doses supply. The last supply range that they have for vaccines will not even last up to 9 days. In states like Maharashtra and in places like Mumbai and other places, including New Delhi, hospitals are overrun. There is a shortage of beds. Yeah. What happened? In March, the health minister of India was boasting about India reaching an end game. Yeah. In other words, that India had overcome. But India failed to learn lessons from other places, from UK, from Brazil. The government let down its guard too early. And I think that that is a lesson that we can take away from India about the need for consistent, continuous vigilance. Because here in Africa, once the numbers go down, people are likely to say, oh, we have overcome. So India boasted about endgame. And in fact, the rest of the world praised India because relative to its population of 1.3 billion, it looked like Narendra Modi was a magician. But now we have seen a situation in India where with over 15 million infection cases and over 180,000 deaths, and infection rate on a daily basis this week alone is close to 300,000 per day. So India is overwhelmed. It has the largest vaccine manufacturing company in the world, the Serum Institute of India. It cannot help itself. The other reason, I guess, is that, well, yes, as I said, India also eased the lockdown too early. It didn't realize that there could be a second wave, there could be a third wave. And hence you had those festivals, the Kupra Mela, the Pictures Festival at the Ganges, people going to Mama Ganga and jumping into the waters and thinking that they had some kind of special immunity. And also the government itself, not doing the right thing. So I think for me, India presents a very serious lesson. They launched the world's largest immunization program, but that largest world immunization program has failed. At the moment, as of yesterday, the United Kingdom had placed India on the red alert, forbidding travels to and from or imposing, quarantine measures against travels from India. They are now on the red list, except, of course, if you are a UK citizen or you are a UK resident with the relevant papers, but you will still have to go into a quarantine. So, but we hope that India will wake up and be able to address the challenge. But the lessons should be for the rest of the world. That the country with the largest vaccine-producing companies has not been able to help itself.
Okay. I mean, for me, India is a basket case. I'll tell you two reasons why. You see that number that came out yesterday, 360,000 new cases. What they are now saying, according to evidence in India, that number is false. That it could be 3 times that number. Yes. So they're in a dire situation. So the fact that we're seeing one of the biggest daily increase in 24 hours, 316,000 cases, could be false because there's not enough testing. There's a paucity of almost everything in India today. The same Indians that didn't want to lock down before, that had to celebrate their festival, now they are locking down. The governors that went ahead to have those state elections, now they want to dial back. They don't want that anymore. You know why? Because it's a dark case. And I hope we're learning. And it's a basket case now in India with the oxygen leak, the scarcity of oxygen and everything going on in India.
Well, we have the world's largest lockdown in India. Yeah. What happened was that they opened too early.
They opened too early. Yes. So I'm sure the lesson has been learned because of elections too, because of religious, consideration and the like. You spoke about logistics. I always say it's one thing to create vaccines, but to get them into the arm is another thing. COVAX is down on the schedule. The only country that has gotten a sizable amount of its schedule from COVAX is Rwanda. They've got 32% of what they ought to get. Nigeria, we still have a long way to go. We've got about 4-something million. We still have about 7.5 or 9 million to go from COVAX. 16 million. Most countries are still way behind. COVAX had a target of 180 million doses to be able to give round to people. They've just only met about 30 to 40% of that target. It's even lower than that in some cases. The logistical problem for the, for taking this vaccine from point A to point B and getting it to the arm has become a nightmare. And they don't get it. COVAX now has backlog up to 2022. They don't know how to fix it. And at the same time, we have countries like, was it Somalia or Congo that wasted the vaccine because it had got into its shelf life. That's another big problem we should look at. And we need to be able to fix that problem. Thirdly, I'll go back to India. Okay. What is happening now in India is the new variant that is coming up. A lot of people are calling the UK variant, they're calling the Californian variant. These things keep evolving with the spike protein. One thing is certain in this COVID-19 fight, if we don't all come together, we will face the music big time because it's going to hurt all of us. And it's beginning to happen. So India has become the poster child of a third, fourth wave that might probably come back to this part of the world because we are down on our vaccinations, we can't get it in time, and we still need a lot of people to get the vaccine to build some form of herd immunity. And when you look at it back in Lagos, we've opened up big time. It's like business as usual all over again. Even if the government says, okay, only 500 people can gather at a place. So these are the factors that are staring at all of us in the face. So I've learned 2 lessons from COVID. Number 1, your money can't save you. Don't fool yourself. Canada is a big example of that. The EU is another one, big example. They've ordered more AstraZeneca vaccines, but the logistical time to turn this around and produce the vaccine and get it into people's arm is a big problem. Secondly, you need to be on top of your logistical game. Why the UK could break even as regards their vaccine campaign was because they were not political about it. In fact, they used an investment banker to do those deals, the procurement deals. So they had very strict conditions, and the vaccine got in early. So these are lessons we should learn going forward.
Quickly, the variant in India, which is part of the problem, is the B1617.
Yes.
But what you need, of course, is political will on the part of Narendra Modi to read the situation and to be able to turn the situation around. Now, as for Africa, yes, many countries in Africa could not make use of the vaccines that they were given. Those vaccines were given a shelf life by the Serum Institute of India of April 13. Now, what AVAT, the AU, the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team did was to take the vaccines from those countries that could not make use of them. And then they contacted the Serum Institute of India, which then extended the shelf life, according to them, to July 31, 2021. But the major challenge that we face in Africa with the administration of the vaccine is the capacity of these countries, the quality of health infrastructure. And I don't know whether African leaders have enough time to take a look at this health infrastructure, because there's no point. They give you the vaccines as donations, and then you cannot administer them. But I hope that we'll get quality leadership in Africa and also here in Nigeria so that we can achieve the objectives with regard to immunization.